Oh, I'm recording.
I'm recording here.
How are you, man?
Doing really well, man.
Yeah.
How are you? Tell me about your big weekend festival.
Oh, man. It was pretty good.
Looked pretty fun.
It was pretty good. Let me just see if this, let me just play this tune here. Let me make sure we're kind of, because we're kind of tech. This is like we're doing some tech stuff here.
Cool. Let me
I just
hear
want to play this real quick. Yeah, man, this stuff just rocks so hard.
Who's the drummer, man?
I think it's like one of those Logic drummer guys.
It sounds like that kind of, Foo Fighters energy for sure.
Hey, how you doing, Johnny?
I'm doing well. How are you, James?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. Yeah, I think that's good. I think
I
got it all going in here now.
I like how the drummer throws in that fill, like, has got me on the, you know what I mean? It really adds.
Let's take a listen.
It really adds, missed opportunity from Ringo or whoever was playing on that original.
Well, I mean, that's what I always think about this shit. Is that they were like, I just always thought it should have been in there. I don't know.
Well, that kind of fill hadn't really been invented.
No,
yeah.
I don't know. I've not heard this one. Hang on, what's this one? Fuck yeah! Do you know what it is yet?
Nice,
dude. See, new tech.
It's actually
on it.
Closer to the original.
Yeah.
Kind of whatever. I forget who Zeppelin ripped it off, but it sounds more like the original blues song.
Yeah.
That Whole Lot of Love was.
Gonna be a lot of blues talk today.
Can I just tell you a quick story? Speaking of blues and harp.
Yeah, for sure.
Last night, this was so impossible way of life. I just had to share it with our listeners.
Please do.
I went down and had to a beach and had a bonfire on the beach.
Oh yeah.
And was with my nephew, and we brought a couple guitars down.
Young bride too.
Yeah, and my young bride and my nephew. He's getting into guitar, so he's been playing.
Well, I met him. He was into some really cool stuff.
Piano, yeah, he's getting good on guitar too. But he just got himself a new axe, like an old Yamaha red label from the early 70s. Nice. Really nice. They're cool acoustic guitars. Yeah. But and we were down there just playing some guitar around the fire.
What kind of songs are you talking about?
We were just doing some kind of country, some Birds actually at that like I Am a Pilgrim kind of Sweetheart of the Rodeo stuff.
Yeah, some pretty good stuff then.
And this guy walked up and just came up from the beach. He was sort of looking out on the water, and he walked up and stopped at the fire. And like in the middle of a song we were singing, like we're right in the middle, he just said, "You guys know any blues?" Swear to God. And I was like, yeah, like for sure. And then he was like, cool. And sat down on a log next to Alex. And like I started playing, just started like trying to think of something. So I was doing like some J.J. Cale, just like, I don't know, Crazy Mama or something. Blues. Whatever. And he right away was like, he's like 12 bar. Cool. I was like, is there any other kind? Sort of, because like, and he was like, well, yeah. And I was like, yeah. And then he was like, you know what? I just live across the street. You mind if I go grab my harp and come jam with you guys?
Nice.
And I was like, 100%, man. Like, bring it back, So he went over there, and he comes back 5 minutes later with his harmonica. And I said, what key's it in? What do you? And he's like, it's in C. He's like, so you play in D. Nice. And I was like, oh, cross harp. Cool. And he was like, yeah. Like he was very confident in his blues harp, and then he started playing, and it was really fucking bluesy, dude.
Really
like
bluesy.
It was straight up blues. Harp.
We've already obviously the correct key was A.
Well, that's what I thought. It was C's not a very bluesy key to me.
No, I don't think so. It's
the funny thing was
more country, really.
Yeah, and so I'm doing kind of a blues thing. Yeah. He's going on the harp, and all of a sudden his wife walks up from across the street and just starts, and then she just looks at him, and he stands up, and they just left and didn't say anything.
Oh, he got in the doghouse.
I think something like that happened.
Yeah, she probably doesn't like how, like, you know, probably like when he gets bluesy, like kind of the crossroads kind of thing. It kind of unleashes the demons.
Yeah, I don't think she was, I don't know what happened, but then the funny part is we're there about another hour, and then we go to leave, getting in the car, and they show up, and they're like, guys, we're just coming down to jam with you. Where are you going? And we're like, yeah, sorry, I thought you left.
So she maybe was going to jam. Maybe she just wanted a piece of the jam.
I think she might have said, let's go back to the house and kind of work something out. Rehearse a bit.
Workshop.
These guys seem serious.
Major players down at Sombrio tonight.
Let's workshop this stuff. And either that, well, because originally I thought the guy left because we weren't bluesy enough. Because he was going for some really, you could tell, some
like
real
Robert Cray.
Authentic Robert Cray kind of
Blues Brothers
out on the porch kind of stuff.
Oh, he was so he was kind of like
not
that makes
bar,
sense.
Not bar blues, more porch blues.
Yeah, early blues.
12 bar. I said it was like 12 bar, huh?
Yeah,
it was literally like that.
I can dig it.
Yeah, 12 bar, nice
choice. You know, it's really hard on a harp not to be bluesy. Like it's like there's no wrong notes.
Well, of course.
So you can kind of just blow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Up and down, all around. And
which is what is amazing to me when people like, like a Sonny Boy Williamson or a Neil Young have such a signature style on an instrument like that. It's them playing it. I find that really interesting.
Not that bluesy.
Well, no, but it's him playing the harp, though, when you hear it.
You can hear him on Old Furry Sings the Blues on Hejira by Joni Mitchell. And
yeah,
you can
Dylan,
tell it's him.
You can't tell, really. I don't think.
He kind of just
goes on it. Yeah.
He's
kind of blowing in the wind, yeah.
Blowing in the wind.
So that was my gig for the weekend, but
that's good. Did you pass around a hat or anything at the end?
No, there wasn't really anybody there, but I just got, is that not the most when somebody walks up and says, "Do you know any blues?"
Yeah.
And it's kind of like
it's all blues, brother.
In BC on like a West Coast kind of BC blues.
I'm trying to think what kind of the correct blues would be for that environment. Because it's kind of more of a West Coast flow, Cali flow style thing that people do normally out there. Like on the West Coast, Fino, it's kind of like more of a rap, like clown, sublime kind of thing. Bedouin sound clash.
This guy was not that vibe though. He was looking, and I drew a bit of a blank. I drew a bit of a blues blank. I was like.
He wanted
for a second, I thought
Mississippi John Hurt or something.
Yeah, for a second, I thought to myself, I don't know if I do know any blues.
That's true.
Like I can play the blues, but I don't know if I just
standards.
Sure, I'll just I don't know if I know any blues standards. What would that be? I was going to Clapton in my head, dude. Actually, I went there.
Well, he kind of has trademarked the blues.
Well, yeah, I was like, okay, bell bottom blues. I'll play that, and then I was like,
that like he meant Clapton because the two words are synonymous.
Right.
You were probably like being a little bit like niche with JJ Cale. He probably wanted like Manish Boy.
Well, right. But then that would have required me singing that kind of stuff, and then I don't know if
that's. I don't know if that's. I don't even know if that's allowed anymore.
That's what I mean. I wouldn't feel comfortable.
The band do a good job on the Last Waltz of recognizing and being in awe of Muddy Waters when he's singing that tune.
Except Robbie's trying to steal the spotlight by doing all that.
Vaseline,
kind of doing that. And there's the other guy there who's there in Muddy's band to do that, like be the hype guy.
Yeah, it's cool that they invented hype man. back then.
Yeah, there's the guy who says, "I'm a man." Yeah, the guy who shouts that is
Robbie's
there.
Trying to get involved.
Robbie's doing. He's like, "I'll just do it."
Yeah.
Over you, and the camera's on him.
Yeah.
Muddy kind of off to the side.
Well, there's a lot of contention about the camera footage because everyone was out getting lunch.
That's right.
And didn't know that Muddy was playing, and they're just lucky the one guy was filming who obviously wasn't hungry.
Lucky that the one guy that was filming had a clear shot of Robbie. That's what was lucky about it.
Well, that's absolutely.
As far as Marty was concerned.
Shout out to Dave Spencer, who sent me, good friend of mine, manager, actually. My agent.
Nice.
Kind of
shout out to you shouting out your manager. So.
Yeah, so he sent me a book called The Dark Stuff, Selected Writings on Rock Music by Nick Kent. And,
I opened that randomly to a random page when I was at your house, and it said "Going to Hell in Hollywood" with Jerry Lee Lewis.
So he kind of gets it. The second chapter is The Bewildering Universe of Rocky Erickson and His Two-Headed Dog. Cool. So don't want to get too heavy with Rocky. I know that we've offended people in the past by suggesting that he's not as famous as Alex Bleeker.
Right.
We got Brian Jones, Tortured Narcissus. Yeah, of course. Spotify famous, Insta famous. But yeah, this stuff looks good. I'm going to get into it really heavily and probably just pilfer a lot of it for, new eyewall material. Thanks for sending that to me.
Speaking of, I also shout out to my Aunt Jeannie, who we know, a friend of the pod, gave me a book recently called Down and Out with the Rolling Stones.
Nice.
That was written by Keith Richards' drug dealer named Tony Sanchez.
Tony Sanchez. Dirty
Dude,
Sanchez.
It's a real fucking book. And it's sleazy as hell. She said, I couldn't even give you this until you were like 37 years old.
Until you were ready.
Yeah.
Until you were ready for this.
So that we're gonna get a lot of material out of that
it's taking us to episode 105 to be kind of ready in Aunt Jeannie's eyes.
Well, I think it is the listening to it that she says, "Okay, you guys kind of seem like you can handle this stuff now."
The truth.
Yeah.
Actually, with the Rolling Stones, they would never have formed if they hadn't struck up a conversation at a train station in 1961. You know what the conversation was about?
What?
The blues. Richards actually struck up a conversation with Jagger about the blues records he was carrying that day. The connection was instant, and the rest was history, I read today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I was reading today that Keith wanted it to be a blues band like in the 80s. He didn't understand. That was part of what went wrong with their relationship, was that Mick, which I sort of saw, since we're talking about a massive rivalreh.
End of the day, mate. Fucking Jagger and fucking Richards. Fucking major fucking rivalry.
Yeah.
No doubt in my mind that it's a fucking rivalry for the fucking ages, mate. It's like me and my brother. It's like me, one of us, not fucking try. I'm a singer.
That's I have to sneeze. Can you keep doing Liam for a second?
Yeah, man. Just sneeze. Johnny's actually. That's more than a sneeze if he's walking off camera. Well, he's left me here alone. I have a feeling it's more than a sneeze that he's doing. I have a fucking feeling that he's out there doing a fucking line so we can dive right back in. Oh, hey, mate. How you doing? Yeah. You all right there?
Yeah, I put an old sweater on that was really dusty.
Yeah?
And it was making me sneeze, so.
How do you feel? Is it out?
Oh, it feels great. No, what I was saying was that in the spirit of this rivalry, that Jagger, I kind of sided with him in that he said I was reading that the Stones' purpose was to follow the trends of music and then make whatever the trend was Stonesy. And that was like their thing. It was like disco Stones, funk Stones, country
Copying
Stones.
the Beatles Stones.
Yeah, exactly. Paint it black Stones. You know what I mean? But then it would be Stones. And I was like, that's cool. Yeah. I was like, that's a cool idea as the years go on.
Yeah.
And Richards was like, in the 80s, they had this conversation. And he's like, well, that sucks. I just think we're like a Chuck Berry
kind of blues
band. And so they just stopped kind of talking and stuff like that because Keith, and then this is as far as I learned. Then Mick tried to go solo.
Yeah,
She's the boss.
I mean, that is the first big feud. That's the first big feud between Jagger and Richards. I think
the first was Exile era. You were telling me.
That's Well, I mean, just from watching that Apple thing and the other one we watched, it seemed like Jagger was just kind of being a playboy back then at that point. And, you know, Keith and Charlie were working their asses off.
Well, and I think that I also, this is funny because I kind of see where both of us are siding here a little bit early. But I kind of think that what also was happening was Keith went deep into his heroin use and stuff. Right. And Jagger started taking a little more control in what the band was doing. He got Mick Taylor and Billy Preston involved in like the arrangements and stuff like that. I think Keith kind of just dropped out a bit.
Do you think they copied the Beatles loads?
The Stones?
Yeah.
In the 60s, for sure.
Yeah.
But then there were no more Beatles to copy.
You know that Paul McCartney said
Yeah.
that quite recently.
Oh, here we go.
So interesting. Mick Jagger and Keith Richards were on Zane Lowe's Apple Music show, which gave them this is quite recently, gave them an opportunity. This is in lockdown. Gave them an opportunity to respond to Paul McCartney's recent claim that the Beatles were a better band than the Stones.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what he said, actually. Quote, "The Stones are rooted in the blues. When they're writing stuff, it has to do with the blues. And we had a little bit more going on. And I love the Stones, but I'm with you. The Beatles are better." So, you know, in a chance to respond to that, Mick, and I kind of like this from Mick. He said, let me find the actual quote because it's good. Here he goes. He just says, well, the real big difference between our bands is one band is still playing stadiums and the other band doesn't exist. Which I thought was kind of a cool quote.
That is a cool quote.
Mick, what do you think about the allegations that the Paul McCartney...
Why are they still talking about this stuff?
Isn't that like the quote from Steven Tyler in that Pump documentary when he says, the only difference between us and younger bands is that they're still jacking off and we're like fucking women or something like that?
Something like that. Yeah.
So sleazy.
Yeah, man.
Hey, speaking of, though, you're talking about the Stones and Beatles, and I had a couple of things here.
I've decided with the Stones and Beatles that it's about 60, you know, obviously Beatles being number one, but it's about 65% to 35% in their favor.
Well, you know,
if it was like an election.
According to a lot of people, it's no contest whatsoever.
No doubt in my mind.
I found a Quora, you know, I guess it's like Reddit or something. People just go on and voice their opinions because they feel
because it matters.
And because maybe Keith will go on there and read it to learn
Keith
a bit more about...
to
know a bit more about himself and
Keith
stuff, right?
Keith needs to know.
So this guy... they make what I love about Quora is at the top they also list their credentials.
Yeah,
the people who write. So this guy, he felt it important on the Stones debate between who's the bigger star, Mick Jagger or Keith Richards.
Okay, biggest star, right?
Yeah,
okay.
that's what this is about.
This is okay.
He found it really important to mention that he has a degree in computer science.
It's huge,
and that he's an intellectual property lawyer. Okay.
Yeah. So you're not just dealing with some fucking Joe Schmuck on the street.
Certainly not.
No.
And he's qualified to talk about this stuff.
On Quora.
Yeah. He says, in America, I'm a little bit skeptical about either of them.
Interesting.
Mick or Keith. Yes, I know they get lots of media attention because old folks who report the news or even own the outlets that report the news love them.
It's a kind of I do my own research kind of perspective.
But in terms in their impact in terms of record sales, musical influence, cultural influence, etc., is hardly comparable to other stars of their genre or any form of entertainment.
Okay.
Now, I know there are nitwits out there who will get upset at anything that's argued logically, much less quantified.
Okay, this guy's kind of got a bit of a Jordan Peterson kind of style thing.
Yeah, but let's talk RIAA certified record sales.
Nice.
Just to point to something that is measurable.
Okay.
The Stones amount to a little more than half of Led Zeppelin's sales. Interesting,
actually.
Yeah. And Led Zepp was a distant fourth to the Beatles. The Stones, with both Mick and Keith, do not even make it into the top 10 in the U.S. and are positively embarrassed by folks like Garth Brooks, of all people, and Elvis Presley. That's the reality of stardom in America, along with the Beatles, whom no one can touch.
Interesting.
People forget that when they watch network TV specials, country music awards, just as an example, there are no Stones. Okay. Anyway, so
this guy's kind of really taking it to them.
Well, what he says, and then he ends
it
with this. I thought you'd like. Did the Stones ever have a Stairway to Heaven? A Yesterday? Do either Mick or Keith have the cultural footprint of Brad Pitt or Leonardo DiCaprio?
Interesting. Okay, so we're this is cool because it's kind of getting into that like historical revisionist kind of history stuff where it's like Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio are somehow related to the musicians that they're talking about. Johnny Depp.
It's
these guys are the same thing.
Well, he mentioned, well, no, that's a different one actually. Yeah, Johnny Depp is credited with making Keith Richards as famous as he is now to people.
I mean, that might be true.
Yeah.
That actually might be true.
They're saying young people only know who Keith Richards is because of Johnny Depp.
I mean, definitely the like...
It's true, I think. Maybe.
The kind of vibe of the kind of drunk pirate vibe. It's like the method Keith. Yeah, maybe. I was reading a few different takes on... Go on.
But no, it's just like the final like the kind of lawyer sort of closing statement.
Yeah,
and this is the best. This is too much typing to waste on a pointless question. Yeah. Mick versus Keith. Does it really matter?
Wow. Yeah. That's like, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, kind of
mic drop.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
A bit of a mic, kind of digital mic drop. I actually read a few different takes on this. I got a lot to say, but I read this take, which I thought just in full was worth telling you because I checked when it was written, and then, my God, I feel bad for this guy because he didn't know what was coming because this is from the early 2000s when asked the same question about Mick and Keith. Who's better, you know?
Okay.
And he says, this guy says, I'm not too thrilled with either of them at this point. In fact... I've become very disillusioned with my musical heroes to the point that I can't consider any of them as heroes anymore. Since the late 60s, Mick has only cared about one thing, his wallet. And Keith has lived a selfish, junky lifestyle with a careless, callous, and reckless abandon that was inconsiderate of those around him for too many years and may have inadvertently caused the death of one of his children. And smuggling drugs in your son's teddy bear? That's classy. And then he goes on. Eric Clapton is quite possibly racist, which is odd considering his love and friendship of guys like Freddie King and Muddy. His drunken remarks that we all know well on iWall concerning certain British politicians were bad enough, and the half-assed reasoning and excuse he gave for them in his book tells me he doesn't quite get it. And I get the impression that he doesn't think black people in England are okay. And only his musical idols are. Chuck Berry films himself women pissing in the bathroom of his restaurant. And I know that he settled this for financial reasons and to avoid a long and public trial. But if I was innocent, I'd fight that shit till I died. And here's where it gets really sad.
Okay.
There's only one rock musician that I still have respect for. And that's Pete Townsend.
Oh, dear.
He seems to be the only one who walks it like he talks it.
Wow.
And he admits he's been an egotistical, self-indulgent rock star. And I'm thinking, this poor guy doesn't know. He's going to have his world shattered in about 2 years.
Oh, I see. It's before that happened.
Dude. It's pre this poor guy.
He'll have no one to respect.
I need to get in touch with this guy.
This was more Dave Grohl or something.
It's interesting you talk about Dave Grohl because I don't know. He's been in the news a lot recently. I don't know if you've
what
noticed
is this thing he's doing? Like, is it? Can I just clarify? Is it like a one-act play or something?
It's kind of a book. Well, here we go. I'll listen. See if you can hear this. Let me know if this is how this sounds to you.
Okay.
When the lockdown happened, I suddenly had nothing to do. I never have nothing to do. I've always been creatively restless, so I thought I would spend my time writing these short stories for an Instagram page, Dave's True Stories. And in doing that, I fell in love with writing. I thought, oh, you know what, maybe I'll just write a book. Without realizing how gargantuan of a project it would be. Narrowing down the stories to put in this book was the biggest challenge. I could write an entire book about the band Scream. I could write an entire book about my time in Nirvana. The idea was to choose the stories that best describe what it's like to be behind the curtain and on the inside of the music, from the drum stool looking out to...
So that's kind
okay. Right on.
Yeah. Could you hear that pretty good?
Yep. Perfect.
Okay, yeah. So basically, yeah, he's just kind of... He's segueing into kind of a Norm Macdonald sort of like going on chat shows to like with these stories that he has that he feels the world needs to know about, you know, his career as a musician, but sort of now segueing into just kind of celebrity, which he's been doing since that Sound City documentary. But, you know, like I often do.
It's a logical next step.
Yeah, well, like him. I often do. And I wonder, like, you know, who watches The Watchmen? You know, we know the powers that be within... you know, this sort of music cycle, the music journalist sort of review cycle and kind of the zeitgeists of our times. And, you know, it's interesting. And it only took, I did about a cursory kind of 12 seconds of research on this. Yep. But it seems that the only story he's telling is about his relationship with this really cool guy called Paul McCartney. So
this is the only story that Dave Grohl's telling?
Well, I just went on the internet, and this is I've just kind of got a couple of examples here. This is him. Okay. This is him last week promoting his book, I guess, on a TV show or something. This is us.
I made friends with Paul McCartney, and his wife and my wife swapped numbers. So every time he'd come to Los Angeles, his wife would text my wife and say, "Hey, we're going to dinner. Would you like to come to dinner?" And of course, my wife knows who Paul McCartney is, but I don't know if he means the same to her as he does to me.
Okay, so it's kind of like maybe she doesn't know. Here's another one for you. This is interesting too. Okay. This shit's really good. You'll like. This is on James Corden here.
Yeah, when I was young, I learned how to play guitar by listening to Beatles records, and I had this Beatles songbook with just simple chord charts, and I would just sit with my guitar in my bedroom, put on the record and play along to it. So I didn't really have a teacher. I just learned from the Beatles. So as most people
I remember the first time I met him. I think it might be the most sort of nervous I've been to kind of sing in an enclosed space with somebody.
Yeah.
But do you find yourself nervous? Like whenever he's asked you to play with him, have you been nervous about that?
Well, there have been. Yes, I mean, it never wears off. Like, when you go to jam with him, you're jamming with Paul McCartney.
Sure.
But,
okay, so it's kind of like, this is like a different story. This one's more about jamming with him and Taylor Swift. And this one...
Okay.
This one's I don't even really know what's going on in this one, but it's something to do with AC/DC, too, so...
That night, I'll tell you the story of that night. Mm-hmm. I wasn't performing at the Grammys. I was, like, presenting an award or something. And I'm lucky to say that Paul McCartney is a friend. And I love him very much. As much as he's a hero of mine, he's also a very sweet man and a friend. And so he was in town too, and he called and said, "What are you doing after the Grammys?" I said, "Well, I think maybe me and Pat and Taylor are just going to have a dinner." And he said, you know, do you mind if me and Nancy come? I'm like, no, yeah, that'd be great. So then he bumps into AC/DC like in the hotel or something. And then they say, what are you doing after the show? And he says, well, I'm going to go have dinner with the Foo Fighters. And Paul said, do you want to come? And so then Paul's wife calls my wife. And then my wife says, hey, do you mind if AC/DC comes to dinner? I was like,
this is kind of what you got a lot of in this book, I guess. There's a lot of stories about Paul McCartney being the coolest guy in the world. And I'm just saying, who put him up to this? We got a Beatles doc coming out. He's pulling out all the stops, Johnny. Paul.
I thought that this book sounds more like about how Dave Grohl's the coolest guy in the world.
Well, I think that's kind of probably part of the, I suppose, the deal. Like Paul was like, listen, Dave, like I need to do everything I can to get ahead of this Beatles documentary because Peter Jackson, he's in New Zealand. They have a COVID, like I can't fly there and deal with this. I can't even get into that country. Yeah. He's gone there. It makes you wonder if the whole COVID thing is like Peter Jackson trying to get a closed border so he can finally get some time with these tapes without being interfered with by Paul. So he's there in New Zealand. He's got hours of this footage, the Let It Be stuff. And Paul can't do anything to stop this. You know, he's got no way to stop this stuff coming out. So we know, like, based on his, like, Kramer-style coffee table book, his Apple Music thing with Ruben, what is going on? All this stuff. That Paul's doing everything he can to get out ahead with this don't think about the black cat kind of energy where, like, you can't help but frame the Lord of the Rings Peter Jackson trilogy, Beatles version, with the knowledge of Paul McCartney, which is just ubiquitous at this point with the internet. And I think this is just one more of his plays. I think he's got Dave out there, a guy who's
Dave
kind
in
of
his
respected.
pocket.
Yes, well, he's clearly got him in his pocket. But I think that what Dave said strategically, you know, because he's a kind of Machiavellian candidate himself, is I'll do this for you. Like I'll write this book that's all about how cool you are, but you've got to like say that I'm at your level.
Yeah, I think it's also a win-win situation because I think Dave's also, you know, boosting his own celebrity. Because if you're Paul McCartney, the best way to, you know, kind of reinforce how cool you are in your own mind is to remind people that you were in the Beatles. Yeah, all the time.
All the time, yeah.
And if you're Dave Grohl,
we were just friends.
Regardless of Nirvana and all that, if you're Dave Grohl, the best thing you can do is talk about how you're friends with the Beatles.
Because as far as I knew, like Dave Grohl was the drummer in Nirvana. And that's kind of his claim to fame.
That's what I thought.
You know,
that's what I thought.
Like his claim to fame as kind of like something that is notoriously important and good about music, you know, is that he was very good at playing drums in that band. And then he joined a band called the Foo Fighters that just seemed like kind of like a band.
Clown rock.
Major clown music.
Yeah.
What a Nirvana.
Grunge.
It's a different, they're just in their own one.
They're grunge.
But are they clown? I guess it's pretty clowny.
No, I don't think that.
I don't even know what.
Well,
they're what's Neil again?
They're pretty diseased.
Major
but it's not
disease.
clown. But it's not clown.
They're almost kind of the origin of the disease.
Yeah, it's the legit disease.
Yeah,
like it's not like we're putting on the mask Slipknot style, but like then we're going out to
we're not talking about
TGI Fridays for some
wings,
you know, garlic fries.
Okay,
like
baby back ribs.
Kurt's actually like I'm gonna walk the walk, talk the talk, and then blow my brains out with a shotgun. You know, like
he's kind of like Linkin Park style. Like
yeah,
Chester.
That's what I mean. Like. I would never say that. I mean, it's clown, but like that's more to do with the other guy, I think.
Yeah. Foo Fighters are major clown. Like acting goofy in videos and stuff.
It's comedy rock. To an extent. Like,
but you know, we shouldn't think that Dave Grohl is this guy. This is the thing. I'm thinking this guy isn't like he's a clown, he's happy all the time and stuff. And I'm not sure how this relates at all to Keith Richards and Mick Jagger. But
yeah, I was waiting for you to get around to that.
No, I've not got anything. But I found this interview with Joe Perry receiving a Kerrang Award from Johnny Depp. And I'll just let him talk. This isn't.
What's a Kerrang?
Well,
award?
Kerrang's a magazine in England. It's kind of like a heavy music magazine. So he's at these awards, and he's just being Joe Perry. He's a cool guy, but
Nice.
and he's talking about Johnny Depp here.
Really good. I mean, that's what the vampires are about, man. It was like, it all came together at Johnny's studio, and just we're all buds. I've known Alice forever, and Johnny, and we were recording, and then the next thing I know is we want to go on the road, and there it is, man. And every once in a while I look up and realize the fans are out there. It's all about the band playing. Everybody in the band is there because they love the music and they want to play, and that's it. And it's like, it's funny, somebody said something a while ago, I don't know, I read it last week, a couple of weeks ago, they said, well, it's another superstar band, and they must be doing it for the money. And it's like not really true. I mean, it's like the last thing on our minds, really, this band is like really, it's all about what rock and roll should be, It's like about 80% getting it right, and then 20% of showing up for the audience, and that's all. And so
Kind of struggling to figure out what it's about.
Garage, man, and I can relate directly to these other cats, man, like this one here.
So then, enter Dave Grohl, who comes on like he's this right now. If you were watching this video, he walks in and sabotages the interview.
Okay.
But listen to what he says to Joe Perry. Okay. It's kind of
before you play that. Did I just hear correctly that Joe Perry was considering the Hollywood Vampires forming a group and jamming in Johnny Depp's studio to like just being in the garage?
Yeah.
When you're like a teenager, starting a band. Okay.
So cool. Dave Grohl just kind of comes in and just like to have a word with him. And I don't know if he realizes that Joe Perry's mic'd up.
Okay.
Because listen to what he says. It's kind of interesting.
It was actually starting to be, in the middle. Like, how you doing, man?
Congratulations.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
At least there's one fucking rock star here.
You got to be around for a while, man, to qualify.
So Dave Grohl goes up to him, is like basically trying to kiss his ass. Like, at least there's one fucking rock star here. I like it that Joe Perry's like, you got to be around for a while.
Is that what he said?
Yeah, listen to him.
I thought he said, this is one fucking rock star here. Let me hear it.
Congratulations.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
At least there's one fucking rock star here.
Whoa, yeah,
you got to be around for a while, man, to qualify.
I mean, so much for Mr. Nice Guy, hey? Like, what's going on with that attitude?
Yeah. So that's the Grammys?
This is some bullshit Kerrang!
Oh, no, the Kerrang Awards.
Inspiration Award.
What a dick. What a dick
thing to do.
Dave Grohl, what is he, Mr. fucking cool all of a sudden?
I think he thinks he is. I don't know. But I watch this stuff carefully. I don't have the hot kind of comedy take on this shit yet, with Atmos and Johnny Depp, but it's all connected. That's all I know. It's all connected.
Well, it's all connected, buddy. We're all just made of the same stuff and this whole goddamn impossible planet.
We're all made of blues, I guess.
Let me tell you this, though. I do want to talk a little bit about this Mick Keith thing, just briefly.
God, of course.
Because it's funny, because one would think on paper when you see, Mick Jagger versus Keith Richards, no contest, right?
Right.
But quite frankly...
Tell me why.
Quite frankly...
Tell me why you think
there is a contest. Well, because I think... For my money, the most people who consider themselves big Stones fans would say it's Keith is everything in the group.
No fucking doubt about it.
Yeah.
No doubt in my mind.
They love to slag Jagger.
Okay.
They love to talk about how it's all Keith. Keith's the heart. You hear that he's the soul of the group. He's the heart of the. You hear it all the time. I have been in debates at parties with people about defending Jagger because I'm like, because Stones fans will literally condemn Mick Jagger and be like, he doesn't need to be in the group. Like, it's all Keith Rich. Could have had any singer. And I'm like, how the fuck are you gonna?
These guys are blue. They're into the blues. It's like
they're
guy
bluesy
you saw.
types.
Because it's like Jagger's not always bluesy. I think that's the issue.
Well, I think he's one of the bluesiest singers around.
I mean, he's not. I mean, you're Stonesy fans. I mean, Keith is the
Stonesy. They're saying he's not Stone. That Keith is. If you're
Stonesy.
Yeah, and for sure he might be the Stonesiest Stone. I'm not saying he's not, but
all this stuff's getting kind of reassessed now that Charlie's gone.
Well, what I'm saying is that in my opinion, you cannot, discount Jagger's contribution to the group as just being like the Rolling Stones frontman, his energy, his voice, everything. And a lot of people are really quick whereas the Paul and John thing is a lot more debatable, I guess, or whatever. People are very quick to be like, no, Keith's the guy who, without him, there'd be no Stones.
But I would say that, like, rancor-based, Jagger's going to be top 3 on any kind of list of best frontmen of all time.
Yeah, but that's rancor crowd. I'm talking about Stones people.
Okay.
They're all going to side with Keith. All of them. That's what I'm trying to say. And I think there's more of a debate there than you could... I think that Jagger's lyrics even can't really be... even more so that I think Plant's lyrics are much more throwaway than Jagger's.
I think Jagger's lyrics are good.
Yeah, me too.
That's what I mean. I think there's people on Quora who say similar things. I mean, for example, have a little thing up here that I was going to ask. I thought it was an interesting question. Were the lyrics of Jagger more astute and intelligent than those of either McCartney and Lennon?
Well, that's funny because I was going to bring that up and say that I do think Jagger's lyrics are better than McCartney's lyrics.
In terms of getting outside the song?
No, I don't think he gets outside the song either, but I just they're more fun. I think they're cooler, and they're a bit more outside the song. They're a little bit, he can do a little Dylan sometimes. He can do a little country.
Yeah.
But I'm not talking better songwriter or anything like that, but I would say Lennon is the best lyricist of the 3, and then Jagger, and then McCartney.
Another thing that kind of is a similar vibe to the Lennon-McCartney thing is that much like Lennon, Keith constantly goes after Jagger. And Jagger doesn't say much back. He kind of keeps it in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I
mean, I was reading... famously, like, Keith made fun of... This is like a kind of punk move. I mean, this is probably why Stonesy people like him, is that Keith, like, didn't get the knighthood, right? Didn't want to get the knighthood.
Well, buddy, Keith's the John.
Yeah.
And Jagger's the Paul.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He went to like the School of Economics. He was going to be the businessman. Yeah. He was going to be, and can I just, I need to do it now because I'm afraid maybe you found the same thing and I'm too excited about it. But I was going through this Quora thing and it's just really, really great. And it's very eye-wall. This is from a guy, I had to scroll way down to find this one. Brad Silverberg.
Oh, yeah.
Co-founder Fuel Capital and partner at Microsoft SVP 1990 to 1999.
This guy's probably been with Quincy.
Buddy, just wait. Is Charlie Watts a corporate partner in the Rolling Stones, or is he an employee of Mick Jagger?
Interesting.
So this is what he says. My personal experience with the Stones is different than what Mitchell describes. I was in charge of Windows 95 for Microsoft, both the business side and the product side. As part of sorry, man. It's just, as part of the Windows 95 launch, we licensed the song Start Me Up
One of
from
my
the
favorite
Stones.
videos of all time.
This is the guy who did it, dude.
Nice.
Like on Quora. From the Stones for the Windows 95 TV campaign. We negotiated for the license for their song directly with the Stones via their business manager, Prince Rupert Lowenstein. businessman. Prince Rupert Lowenstein. The Stones are a business partnership between Mick and Keith.
Interesting.
With Mick as CEO.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
The final decisions are made by Mick, with Keith having a say. The rest are employees, some of whom get a cut of the royalties, but who don't really get a vote in the business decision.
Interesting.
Originally, Mick did not want to license the song. At the time, the Stones had not licensed their songs for commercials, and Mick wanted to keep it that way. Mick is also a very smart businessman and had invested his money well. He was set. He went to the London School of Economics.
Yeah.
Keith, however, was more open to licensing the song. He's not as smart of a businessman and appealed to Mick, probably saying, "Man, I need the money." I guess Keith's burn rate was higher than Mick's. He convinced Mick and we got the song. There was never any mention of needing to talk to Charlie Watts or anyone else. It was Mick and Keith's decision, with Prince Rupert giving his advice and as the point person. Indeed, when they delivered the song, it was a different version than the one we're all familiar with. We were quite surprised, and it was a difficult negotiation getting the right version.
Interesting.
Why were we given a different version? Because the one they gave us was recorded later and with different band members, and the royalty split for Mick and Keith was higher.
Wow.
In the later version.
Wow.
Lower for them in the familiar version. They tried to pass the version that was more favorable to them on us. We balked, and
good for them for
ultimately
noticing. You can't imagine Balmer. It's probably the bluesy
Paul Allen
probably was like, wait a minute, I know Charlie's shuffle.
Oh, 100%. He's like, something's wrong here.
Yeah.
Brad Chase. We all know Brad Chase. He's on stage in that famous video.
Yeah.
Brad Chase, who ran marketing for me on Windows 95 and who was the person who did the negotiating with the Stones, tells the story of the licensing of the song in this other article. Anyway.
Well, I'll be reading that before bed.
This was the ending. Interestingly, it was reported that we paid $14 million for the song. We didn't. We just paid a few million. Still a lot of money, but worth every penny considering how impactful that TV ad was. For the next year, anytime Start Me Up was playing, people thought Windows 95.
Fuck yeah. I don't give a fuck if anyone finds that. That's the best thing I've heard in like 3 years. We basically started this podcast on like the premise of two things: that weird like interview with Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer with Charlie Rose, and Steve Ballmer in the Windows 95 Start Me Up launch video. So unbelievable that I haven't looked into the origin story.
Yeah, it was someone who was there, and I just love
who negotiated.
Brokered the deal. And I just love him saying that, like, he knew, like, he's stating as fact, the Stones were a corporate partnership between Mick and Keith with Mick as CEO.
I can see
there
that.
You go.
You know, Mick's kind of got, but that's interesting because maybe that's why Keith, I mean, it's kind of corporate insurrection, but that's maybe why Keith's always telling everyone that Jagger has a tiny cock.
Right.
You know about this?
No.
Well, I mean, it's famously the big feud. The big feud was that Richards said Marianne Faithfull had no fun with his tiny Todger. We all know he's got an enormous pair of balls, but he doesn't quite fill the gap, if you know what I mean. So, Jagger apparently was so pissed with it that he made Richards publicly apologize as a prerequisite for ever playing music with him and touring again.
Just boys on the schoolyard, huh?
Yeah, I guess so. But it's interesting because it's lucky they got back together because this is the big major feud. The first the first big feud. This is all 80s shit. The first one was when Jagger toured Dirty Work.
Okay.
He refused to tour it, because he wanted to do his solo album.
Oh, sorry, I thought that was the solo album. I haven't really delved into either of those albums.
I mean, I looked up a ranker list of the solo records, and it's pretty slim pickings.
Yeah.
It's not like Lennon and McCartney where you can kind of There's stuff.
What I heard, and this just goes to what I was saying, that the Stones fans all sided with Keith's solo
That's
albums.
what it seems to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. More Stonesy, presumably.
Well, yeah, because according to them, and it's true. I mean, Mick just singing, it's not going to be Stonesy as much. He is more Stonesy, Keith.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'd say he's more Stonesy. Yeah, I'd say that. Even Charlie Watts is more Stonesy, maybe.
Well, because Keith also sings.
Yeah,
on the Stones records,
cool tunes.
Yeah, so if he's singing and playing guitar, it's going to sound, because it's like Happy on Exile or something.
It's a good tune.
You know, yeah.
Well, luckily they kind of created an uneasy truce in 1989 and got back together.
Right. Based on let's make some fucking money.
Steel
kind of
wheels. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, this is like, I don't know who writes these things. For a while, the bandmates seemed blissfully reunited, writing some of their best reviewed albums of all time, including Voodoo Lounge, the live album Stripped, and 2005's A Bigger Bang. I'm not sure if they're up there as their best reviewed albums of all time, but maybe they were.
I think their biggest hit during that period was the cover of Like a Rolling Stone.
Which was on the front cover of Rolling Stone.
Bridges to Babylon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a kind of Mick and I live off the fire and ice between us situation.
Yeah.
You know?
100%. I mean, it's like it was so funny. Paul Hawley, friend of the pod, good drummer, great drummer. He's a big Beatles. He's one of the most Beatlesy guys I know.
Interesting, because he was in a band with someone who was extremely not Beatlesy.
Yeah, I know. Well, we all know that, that's
don't need
probably...
to dox him.
Yeah, some of the feud that happened in that group was based
around the Beatles. I'd actually like to get into that. That's an interesting question for Paul. I'd like, Paul, if you could respond to us about whether the not liking the Beatles was part of the kind of major events.
Just get him on the pod, really.
We should actually.
I'll see if he wants to come on.
It's important.
But
we can probably ask Luke. I mean, it's pretty easy.
Luke would know. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. But no. But Paul, I told Paul.
Are you and Luke good right now? I mean, what he was saying about you, being like.
What was he saying? Oh, it was about the pod. He wasn't a fan of our Rolling Stone reading. The Rolling
that was my
Stone
favorite episode.
Well, that's what I said. I thought it was some of our strongest stuff.
Our strongest. I think it's what people
he's
want.
A tough critic,
I think people want us to just. I thought just reading a list. I mean, okay, I would just say this to Luke. A lot of the people who listen to this podcast cannot read, so we're kind of doing our part just to let them know what the 250
who's
top
number
rolls.
one,
because it's hard if you can't.
Well, that's the way I thought, but he he's into. Here's the thing: is he's into Norm Macdonald, Lenny Bruce, Stephen Wright, these types of
Steven
If
Tyler.
the comedy's not exactly the comedians like that, those types of clowns. Yeah. So if the comedy's not hitting at that kind of high level all the time, you're going to hear about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And no, it's all good. But anyway, so Paul, I wrote Paul
McCartney,
and I said, no, Holly. And I said to him, hey, tomorrow we're doing we did last night John Lennon versus Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
Who's better? And he said, let me guess. It ends with you saying that they both need each other and they're both equally important. I was like, yeah, pretty much.
Well, listen, we're not trying to come up with any kind of Frickian style perspective.
No, but it's kind of the Keith. That's what I'm saying. That's kind of the thing with
Fire and Ice.
Keith too, though, right? Like without Mick singing, it would not be as exciting. And without Keith playing guitar, obviously it would not be, so...
Well, I'm just trying to look up what, I think it was summed up perfectly by Jimmy Hay in that thing I sent you yesterday that he said. So I actually want to say, if you like this podcast, which you should, because it's important stuff, that you can subscribe to our Patreon at Patreon. I think it's like /an impossible way of life, or maybe impossible way of life. And you get to comment on things that we say, such as Jimmy Hay did here. I like to think of you two as a couple of Pauls masturbating in the same room together, as young Beatles are prone to do. It's like a fairy tale. And this one was great, as per usual. I don't know if he's talking about the fairy tale, us jacking off, or the episode, but either way, I'm into it.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
So, you know. Who are we going to be jacking off with? Well, with each other, obviously. It's hard to do over the internet, but like, are we Richards or Jagger?
Like, who am I siding with?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say that as much as I want to give love to Mick and sympathize with him, that I think the Stones fans of the world are too harsh to him in not giving him credit in the group.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to go Keith. Because Keith, as far as riffs go, that stuff that he was doing on the guitar back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, a couple years in the 80s, was some of the greatest stuff I've ever heard on that instrument. And although I love Mick's...
It's just in G, mate. It's just G.
Yeah, as much as I love Mick, there's other singers that I think were also great. But I think Mick did a lot more, for the Stones, becoming the powerhouse, like, world touring act that they still continue to be.
He's kind of like he's the Queen corporate energy in the band.
Yeah.
The Lips.
They would not be still selling out
stadiums,
arenas without Mick. No chance.
No.
But I'm gonna pick Keith as far as my pick of who wins the battle between Richards Jagger.
Well, here's a take for
from
you.
a musical standpoint.
Yeah, here's a take for you from someone. He says, this guy says, I can't say who I would respect more as a human being. I have mixed feelings, not Mick feelings. But he kind of breaks it down, and, I don't think this guy's got any kind of inside knowledge or anything. I think he's just kind of doing what we're doing. This guy I found on Reddit, he says, Mick's pros. This is like pros v cons. Hardworking, cultured, witty, intelligence. Mm-hmm. This would be on his kind of power ranking card, right?
Right.
Supposedly a great host. Reputedly a great lover.
Right.
Very health conscious, like me. That's what this guy says. And I think this is what you're kind of referring to too. Keeps the band together during difficult times.
Paul, dude.
Okay. Cons.
That's every one of those could be Paul McCartney.
Except for the great lover bit, I bet.
Yeah.
I mean, Dave Grohl's suggesting that Paul McCartney... I don't think Paul McCartney's ever had sex, but Dave Grohl's suggesting that Paul's a great host. Brings AC/DC round to the dinner table.
I bet you Paul is a good host.
Yeah. Okay.
If you can stand him kind of doing, hello, my baby, hello, my dog, on the piano.
He gets onto the piano every time. He's just like, fuck, he's doing it again.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
Every story.
He starts playing Let It Be.
Hello. Yeah. He does like show tunes and shit.
Jesus. Yeah. I'd hate that.
I'd like it for a while.
Yeah.
Cons. After the first couple hours that were... Okay.
Has treated women in his life horribly. Compulsively promiscuous and unfaithful. Has ripped off musicians. Cold and unresponsive to fans. And seldom reveals anything in interviews. Yeah.
Interesting.
Another thing that that Keith said that was a bit mean about Mick. He said he said he has a tiny cock.
Remember how John Lennon also said mean things about Paul?
Interesting, yeah. Well, Richards also criticized Jagger's decision to father an 8th child at the age of 73 by saying, "Those poor kids, it's time for the snip. You can't be a father at that age." Which led him to actually apologize publicly on Twitter for hurting Mick's feelings. Which I think is fair enough, because it's a bit of a mean thing to say. I mean, my favorite Spinal Tap one, this one, Richards is also known to describe Jagger's solo album, Goddess in the Doorway, as dog shit in the doorway in his 2011 memoir, Life. 2-word review for this one.
Right on.
Yeah. Okay, what else have I got here? Oh, yeah, so we didn't get to Keith. So here's Keith's pros and cons. Good heart.
Okay.
treats his family and exes very well. Extremely funny and insightful in interviews, and more responsive to fans. Cons. Self-indulgent with regards to his vices. Past violence with Anita Pallenberg. Nearly wrecked the band with his drug use. Treated friends and associates very badly during his drug years, according to biographies. Ripped off other musicians. Petty attacks on Mick in the press. And a very selfish smoker.
What?
I guess
What does
you
that
can't
mean?
smoke weed with him or smoke. I don't even know. Maybe you can't share drugs. I don't know. So
His list of cons seem a lot lighter than Mick's.
Well, to me, it seems like they're a balancing act. His cons are Mick's pros, and Mick's cons are Keith's pros. It's
aside
fire
from
and
like
ice.
abuse, being physically abusive to Anita, like sounds like you're saying his cons are that he did drugs.
We've both
like.
I mean, that's to me. He seems like it'd be a good party, a good time.
I mean, that's the con for Keith Richards. Like he did drugs, and then like he was. You know what I mean? It's like I don't know.
Yeah.
Like they both ripped off musicians. They said, well, that's everybody. You say that about everybody. Anybody we've talked about on this show.
Okay, here's a good question though about them. And talk about them. We'll end on this. Like I was thinking about this, and I'm not really like I'm just spitballing, but like thinking about like a lot of these bands, like obviously the Beatles are like this, Pretty Things, the Kinks, Stones, like improved like so much as songwriters in such a short space of time.
Yep.
And I was just thinking, who's the most improved songwriting like band? Like in terms of like, you know, like I don't know, like I should have known better to like Tomorrow Never Knows is probably like what, 3 years or something? You know,
yeah, but I think those early songs are great too. So it would have to be, if you're talking most improved, it would have to be like the early stuff's pretty bad.
I guess
and
so.
then it got great or something.
Yeah.
You know, because like,
what about the Kinks though?
Yeah, maybe. Like I could see that because like, even though the early stuff's great, I think it's probably Stones, man.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was thinking a little bit about the Stones here.
The early records are kind of weak to me a bit. Like a few, you know, like not super weak, but like Aftermath, like it's good, but like you don't really throw it on. Like Under My Thumb's good. Like,
yeah.
But then by the time you get, you know, 2-3 years later to Beggar's Banquet,
it's insane.
It's ripping, you know? So I think they started pretty slow.
Yeah.
The Stones. The first couple Kinks records are awesome. You know,
yeah.
you really got me
All
on
Day
the
and
first
All the
album.
Night, yeah.
You know, a second album, kind of Kinks, amazing album. You know, like and Beatles, Please Me. You know how I feel about that. Like out the gate, it's awesome.
Yeah,
you know. But the first 12 by 5 by the Stones, it's Chuck Berry, bluesy rock and roll, but they don't have much of an identity. You know.
Yeah.
They
had a live identity. They had a live show identity.
Yeah, I might take a little heat for that, but I personally think their early records are a lot weaker.
We don't get to talk. We don't get to know what Brian would say about it. You know what I mean? What Brian Jones? I'd love to know what Brian Jones and Mick Jones too would say about it.
Well, it's funny because actually
Mick Taylor,
Keith,
of course.
In the early days, Keith was way less of a star than Brian.
Yeah,
you know?
I know.
Like he was it was definitely Mick and Brian were the guys, right?
So
then Keith
Gilmore style.
When Keith got more fashion oriented and drugs, he created his identity.
Yeah.
That's when he became a real rock star.
Yeah.
You know? But I think that there's without a doubt in my mind that the early Stones records pale in comparison to Beatles, Kinks, a lot of that stuff.
Now I'm accidentally once again called Mick Taylor Mick Jones. I'm thinking about the Clash too, going from like London Calling to Sandinista in like 2 years or something. Mad.
Yeah, but London Calling's awesome though.
Yeah, it is really good. Yeah, I guess like complexity.
I mean, that's interesting.
Complexity.
Like, what about like? Yeah, that's a good. What about like even like maybe Bowie or something?
Yeah, Bowie's early stuff.
First couple records are
a bit shit.
It's a bit weird. Yeah, it's a bit, and then like by Hunky Dory, it's like the best stuff.
Interesting.
You know, going.
And then you'd have to like measure that on a chart against length of time it took to get there. Because how long between Aftermath and like Let It Bleed?
I guess,
or even
Let It
earlier,
Bleed.
really.
No,
Satanic
I would
Majesties.
say that.
Let It
Good tunes, but I would say
Beggars?
when they
Which
when
is
they
the first
hit
one of those.
probably. I would say probably Beggars is the one where it's like the songs are all there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Sticky Fingers is, okay, we're off and running.
Here we go.
Know?
To the races.
And then they've got it dialed in. But then, it's interesting when this is a good debate, because then there's other groups like the Velvets or something that all 4 albums are good. They were right out. They just didn't really change. They changed, but it was always good,
I'm, but we'll close it up here, but I'm with you with Keith, man.
Yeah.
Without his fucking attitude,
well, he's just,
man. He's fucking rock and roll.
He's badass. Yeah. He's the biggest badass in rock and roll history. So how are you not going to pick him?
Him or like him, meaning in about 25 years, Johnny Depp. Long play.
Well, yeah, he is. I'll say this right now, that he's the most rock and roll guy.
Yeah,
that I can think of.
And
Keith
then
Richards.
How about this? That Lennon and McCartney, forget them in this one because they're not really. Jagger and Richards, best songwriting duo. Like legit duo.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, but then you're going to get me talking about all my kind of like brill building shit.
Sure,
and
that's
stuff like
fine.
that.
Carol's in there and shit. Yeah.
Goff and King and Lieber and Stoller and the Sherman Brothers for Disney. And
well, we'll have to.
like
we'll have to do that. We'll have to do that.
But
That's
yeah,
some
no,
more
I
of
know
a
what you
Sunday
mean.
thing.
Rock and roll duo songwriters. Yeah, but okay, if you're not going to count Lennon and McCartney,
Well,
yeah,
they didn't write together really. They only wrote about 10
not
songs
really.
together, didn't they? I mean,
Yeah, not
McCartney's
really,
trying to
yeah.
get them all himself.
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
Lots
Because
to
I think that
discuss.
Jagger and Keith really did.
Yeah.
And actually, little bit of a correction before we go. I talked a lot earlier about Jagger writing the lyrics,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that there's a good chance that Keith actually wrote some lyrics too.
Yeah.
Quite a few. So I shouldn't. And Jagger actually wrote quite a bit of music too, I think. So, yeah, I think that really is a collaborative thing, their songs.
When are you coming home, mate?
Be home this weekend, buddy.
Oh, that's great news, man.
See you then.
Yeah, I'll certainly will, and I'll speak to you later on today.
That was great.
Everyone
okay.
have a lovely day, and if you like this, subscribe to our Patreon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.